From a very early age, without you realizing it, an idea was planted inside you. The idea that you are not enough. It wasn't something you chose to believe. It was imposed, repeated in glances, cutting words, and silent comparisons. We grow up in a society that teaches us to see ourselves as a problem to be fixed, a flaw to be hidden, a shame to be carried. School, family, friends, the media, all participate in this invisible construction, and little by little, you begin to believe that there is something fundamentally wrong with being who you are. Alfred Adler, one of the great masters of psychology, saw this brutal truth long before it was popularized. He understood that the feeling of inferiority is not natural. It is a creation, a product of comparisons, unrealistic expectations, and failures that, instead of being treated as part of life, are used as evidence to justify self-deprecation. You were not born hating yourself. You were taught to do so. And as long as you continue to carry this belief as if it were your own, you will remain chained to a lie that was not created by you, but that now only you can destroy. Today, we will expose this lie. We will cross the curtain of illusions that made you believe you are small, incapable, or unworthy. We will dive into Adler's mind, understand his relentless view on the inferiority complex, and reveal the antidote he offered. A path that is not based on empty self-help, but on a profound transformation of how you see yourself and position yourself in the world. This video is a call for you to stop fighting against yourself and start fighting alongside yourself. Because the truth is simple. As long as you believe you are less than you are, the world will continue to treat you as such. If you are ready to face the origin of your pain and take back the power that has always been yours, stay with me. Let's destroy the lie. Let's rebuild your self-image, and this time, consciously. At the beginning of the 20th century, Alfred Adler, breaking away from the more deterministic views of psychoanalysis, introduced one of the most powerful and dangerous concepts in psychology, the inferiority complex. For Adler, the feeling of inadequacy was not just a personal flaw or an isolated consequence of the lives of certain individuals. It was an inevitable part of the human experience. Every human being, from childhood, faces their own smallness in the world. We are fragile, powerless, dependent. And it is this initial feeling that becomes the fertile ground where the inferiority complex can flourish. The child, upon realizing their limitations, naturally feels that something is missing. This feeling, in itself, is not destructive. On the contrary, Adler believed that this perception of inferiority could be the driving force for overcoming, for growth, and for the construction of great achievements. The strength that drives great deeds arises from the awareness that we are not yet what we could be. It is the tension between who we are and who we can become that fuels our desire to evolve. The problem is that this healthy impulse is easily corrupted. And it is here that the origin of true poison begins. When the child is constantly exposed to criticism, disdain, rejection, comparisons, and unattainable expectations, the feeling of inferiority ceases to be a stimulus for growth and transforms into an open wound, into a painful conviction that they are, at their core, inadequate. It is not that they need to grow. It is that they believe something in their nature is irreparably wrong. Families, often unconsciously, plant these seeds by making disproportionate demands, by comparing children to one another, by projecting their personal frustrations onto the children. Phrases like, "Why can't you be like your brother? You never do anything right," or even the cold silence in the face of a failed attempt, create, within the young person, a poisonous narrative. I am less. I am insufficient. Adler also observed that this feeling is reinforced in the school environment, where standardization and comparison are pillars of the system. The individuality of the person does not matter. What matters is how they fit into the cold metrics of academic performance. Personal value begins to be measured not by character, sensitivity, or courage, but by numbers, awards, and external validations. Thus, what was supposed to be a natural phase of human development, the perception of limitation and the struggle for overcoming, degenerates into an identity marked by shame, insecurity, and self-sabotage. The child learns not only to perceive their flaws, but to identify with them. They do not say, "I made a mistake." They say, "I am a mistake." Adler went even further. He realized that, once established, the inferiority complex creates a self-perpetuating dynamic. The individual, dominated by the feeling of being lesser, begins to avoid challenges, to sabotage themselves in the face of opportunities, to seek to hide their vulnerabilities at all costs. And by doing so, they further reinforce their belief in their incapacity. It is a brutal, vicious cycle. Inferiority feeds evasion, evasion feeds inferiority, and the human being is reduced to a fearful caricature of what they could have been. But Adler did not see this as destiny. For him, the origin of the complex was also the key to its overcoming. The awareness that the feeling of inferiority was learned, and not an absolute truth, is the first step to dismantling the inner prison. Therefore, before we move on to the next part, stop and reflect. What were you taught about who you are? What ideas, installed in your still young mind, continue to silently command your choices, your fears, your limitations? Because now that you understand how the inferiority complex was born within you, it is time to go even deeper. To understand how the world you live in actively works every day to keep that feeling alive, and even profits from it. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. If the inferiority complex is born in childhood, as Adler demonstrated, society is the fuel that keeps that flame alive, sometimes so intensely that it turns into an internal fire. You need to understand, the world we live in is not interested in your liberation. It depends on your insecurity to survive. From a very early age, you were thrown into systems that constantly reinforce the idea that there is something wrong with being who you are. School was your first laboratory of systematic comparison. From the beginning, you learned that there is an invisible ruler and your worth will be measured by it. Report cards, tests, sports competitions, performance rankings. It doesn't matter your unique potential, your hidden talents, or your distinctive characteristics. Everything is reduced to numbers, positions, and trophies. Every little failure, every small victory of others is a silent reminder. You are not enough. Something is still missing. And that was just the beginning. The society you grew up in was shaped to exploit your insecurities as an economic resource. The media, which should broaden your view of the world, has turned into a factory of unattainable standards. Advertisements, movies, social media, all feeding daily the idea that there is an ideal model of success, beauty, happiness, and that evidently you are still far from it. The goal is not to inform or inspire. The goal is to create desire, and desire arises from the feeling of lack. Every image, every ad, every influencer exists to reinforce in you the idea that, to be worthy, to be seen, to be loved, you need to consume something, a product, a lifestyle, a new identity. And then comes the market, voracious, offering solutions to problems it itself helped create. Do you feel inadequate? Buy new clothes. Do you feel insecure? Take a personal success course. Do you feel unhappy? Change your appearance. Companies don't just sell products, they sell the hope of acceptance. They sell the illusion that you can finally be enough if you consume what they offer. And when the promised relief doesn't come, because it never does, the cycle repeats. More dissatisfaction, more consumption, more control. The dynamic is as subtle as it is cruel. The culture of comparison is turned into the norm. You are encouraged to measure yourself all the time. Social media amplifies this brutally. You not only compare your body, your life, and your achievements, you even compare the way you feel pain, how you suffer, how you overcome. Nothing is truly yours. Everything becomes a stage. Everything becomes performance. Within this system, even human relationships are corrupted. Relationships become silent contracts of mutual validation. You are important as long as you meet expectations. You are loved as long as you play the expected role. Who you truly are, with your flaws, your doubts, your silent struggles, is rarely accepted. Often, not even by yourself. Adler understood that the human being, naturally social, is also vulnerable to social manipulation. When society values only superficial shine, external success, and the appearance of happiness, it pushes you to live a facade life. You wear masks not to protect yourself from others, but to protect yourself from a society that turns any imperfection into a reason for exclusion. And so, day after day, you are conditioned to believe that you are inferior, not by chance, but by design. Not because you truly are less, but because an entire system needs you to continue feeling that way to function. Now that you see this mechanism, it's time to understand the true rupture that Adler proposed. Because unlike what the world taught you, overcoming inferiority is not about becoming better in the eyes of others. It's about completely transcending the game of comparison. And it is exactly this revolutionary vision that we will reveal in the next part.